So the big update is finally here, Foxtrots. I hope you are enjoying Unity Cup because despite still not fully understanding the nuances of its mechanics and how to efficiently utilize them, I'm having so much fun because the game feels very much different than the past 4 or so months of Ura Finale, and we are still learning, so for now my advice really for Unity Cup is have fun as you learn. Now, while we are learning Unity Cup, we also have to take into account the changes that have arrived with the half anniversary patch. And on top of the abundant quality of life changes that I think most of us were surprised that we got, there are a lot of gameplay changes that will, depending on your playstyle, your build philosophy, will maybe marginally or drastically affect how you train your Umas. So we are going to do a quick rundown of these changes, but I will also put links where you can check some of these in full detail. And basically, to give you a quick list of what we will go through in this video, we are going to tackle the Guts Rework. We will be talking about the Dueling and Spot Struggle mechanic. We will also be talking about the behavior of Umas on the final straight, skill changes, and training debuff changes. So let's start with probably the stat that is getting a significant rework, Guts. So Guts for a long time has been called a borderline useless stat, unless you heard it from Tazuna, and Wit being more favored than Guts. And for a long time, I have called Guts a stat that does not need to be prioritized, but it's not something you can completely ignore. Because Guts still has a general target of 300 to 400, just like Wit in general, with, front runners, of course, still wanting more than about 500 Wit. But Guts now does have an impact on your final spurt because it is tied to one of the new mechanics, which is Dueling. And the other mechanic is Spot Struggle. Now for Dueling, in the final straight of a race, when there are multiple Umas that meet the following requirements, which I will mention, they will get a target top speed and acceleration boost based on the amount of Guts that they have. Now these requirements are, they must have a similar current speed, so they are within less of about half a meter per second of each other. They have to be within 3 meters of each other for more than 2 seconds. They have at least 15% stamina or HP left, and they have to be on the final straight. So essentially, whenever there are 2 or more Umas that are fighting for a position or first place in the final straight, they will get a speed and acceleration boost based on their Guts. While this may tempt you to add a Guts card to your deck and train Guts, and even Rainbow train Guts whenever you see it, I honestly think that having the prioritized stats like speed, power, stamina are still important. And Guts at this point in your support deck, in theory at least, will have to let time and research do its work, theory crafting, give us enough information. But for now, in theory, it will serve primarily as a stat stick. So a good example is the Haru Urara Guts card, which has a whopping, I believe, 15% training effectiveness at max LD, which you can get for free by using your friend points. And it's a very, very good card for Guts, especially after the Guts rework. You will not really be training Guts whenever it's Rainbow training ready, especially when there are Rainbow trainings on speed, power, stamina, maybe even Wit if you run a Wit card. And honestly, I see myself training Guts in the context of Unity Cup when there are a lot of Unity training Umas ready, and when there are a lot of support cards that land on Guts. The only difference now is that because of how Unity Cup works, and because of the Guts rework, you will not see training Guts as a waste of a turn, or you won't feel so bad like, the only reason why I am training Guts is because all cards landed on Guts for that turn. Like, if you see a lot of cards landing on Guts, you won't exactly celebrate, but you won't feel bad like, okay, at least a lot of them landed on this one stat, and this one stat is Guts. And that's basically how I think Guts will be for now and for a while. So you will not be training Guts, like I said, whenever it's ready for Rainbow training, especially when it is not level 5 training. But of course, in the context of Unity Cup, if you see a lot of Unity training on Guts more than your other stats, you might want to train Guts for that turn. Now, this is why you may have heard people hyping up the Haruura card prior to its rework, and I have tried it, and they are right. The thing on top of Haruura having 15% training effectiveness, a lot of her events do not subtract energy. A handful of them recover a nice amount of energy, which is nice. There is basically no negative, I guess. There is no negative downside to picking this card. Maybe the lack of like skill hints is the only downside, but compared to something like, say, Winning Ticket, who is a very decent power card, in my honest opinion, it does give you Homestretch Haste and Embody in Mind, which is the upgraded version of Homestretch Haste. It does come at a cost of getting a huge energy deduction twice, so that could be a deal breaker for some, or it could be an annoyance that some people will have to deal with. One thing I do plan to run, especially with Unity Cup, the balance patches, the quality of life changes, I do plan to run 3-2-1 support card decks. Now, where most of the time I usually run 4-2, so let's say for a standard Ura Finale run, I usually run 4 speed guards and 2 stamina cards if it is a medium or long Uma, or 2 power cards if it is a sprint or mile Uma. I will now run 3 speed, 2 power, or 2 stamina, depending on the race length, and maybe 1 Guts card or a PAL card. This Guts rework also means that Umas with Guts growth in their stat growths will now have more chances to shine, I guess, since that extra 10 or 20% in Guts can really make a difference in the final straight when the dueling mechanic is in play. Now, Spot Struggle is the other mechanic introduced in the latest patch, and this is a front-runner exclusive mechanic. This mechanic happens after the first 150 meters of the race until shortly after the beginning of middle race. Now, when Spot Struggle is in play, front-runners will further increase their target top speed, which is based on Guts. And remember, front-runners have the highest speed multiplier at the start of the race, and this is why they practically blaze past everyone else the moment the gates open. Now, frontrunners want and need to be first place before late race to have a very good, if not guaranteed, first place finish. Now, Spot Struggle helps them take the lead very early, especially when there are other frontrunners. This speed boost does come at a stamina cost, but before we check those costs, I must introduce the technical 5th racing strategy, which is called the Runaway strategy. This strategy is essentially a subcategory of frontrunners, and it is a skill that you have to pick up, at least for now, for Silent Suzuka. Skills that they use and their mechanics still revolve around being a frontrunner because your racing strategy that you pick is still a frontrunner. Now, what they do differently, however, is that they turn off all limitations and really go as fast as they can physically go at the cost of a very high stamina expenditure. Now, if you have watched Season 2 of the anime of Umamusume or even just Season 1, the way Silent Suzuka and Twin Turbo run is the embodiment of this strategy. Gassing out is expected. If you have seen any of Twin Turbo's races in real life, yes, like you can definitely see Twin Turbo gas out. And when it does work, because their lead is so large, those behind will most likely not arrive in time to take the lead from them as they gas out. And again, I'd love to go into full detail and better detail with this, but with the patch itself just releasing, I cannot give anything definitive unless I try this out some more and gather more data. But for now, here are the stamina costs for the spot struggle strategy. Frontrunners will use about 1.4 times more stamina than usual. Runaways will use about 3.5 times more stamina than usual. If they rush, frontrunners will use 3.6 times more stamina than usual, while a rushing runaway will use 7.7 times more stamina than usual. With this in mind, having extra stamina on a frontrunner is now not just seen as a luxury or maybe even a waste of stamina, but it's good to see it maybe as an insurance for when this mechanic is in play. Now, this patch also changes how Umas behave on the final straight. If you have crashed out because your Uma got blocked in before the final 400 meters of a race or at the 400 meter mark of a race as they enter the final straight out of the final corner, this mechanic makes that happen much less. So this is because Umas now will fan out during the final corner. It makes it harder for Umas to actually get blocked. Now, unfortunately, it does not mean your chances of getting blocked are zero, but at least you should not lose races as often as much because you got blocked. Now, to complement this, skill changes have been done, especially unique skills, and I will be leaving a link in the description where you can see if any of your Umas have been affected or if any of your favorite skills have been changed as well. And generally, all of them are buffs, generally, depending on how you look at it. Now, if you love training TM Opera O or Mayano Top Gun, you might be worried about the changes on the final straight because you might be thinking, how will I trigger their unique skill now that they are not being surrounded? Now, to give you some context, and as an example, TM Opera O's unique skill requires TM Opera O to be surrounded literally everywhere. And this is basically a reference in her win in Arimakinen, where she was hopelessly surrounded, but somehow find a tiny gap and won. Now, this has been changed from her requiring to be surrounded to instead just needing to have one other Umamusume nearby. And like I said, the list is long, but if you want to look into further detail, there is a link in the description for you to check. And last but definitely not the least is the training changes in relation to debuffs. With Unity Cup being very training heavy, training debuffs arguably hurt more in Unity than they do in Ura Finale. And it was already strange to me how, for example, despite bringing our Umas to a beach for summer camp, I cannot visit the infirmary to remove a debuff. So imagine having to sit through summer camp with practice poor, migraine, or in my opinion, the worst debuff you could have, slacker. So imagine sitting through summer camp with that and you have no choice but to just deal with it because you cannot visit the infirmary. Now, by doing resting and recreation in summer camp, you can actually remove any random debuff that you have. Except, of course, special ones like Super Creeks Under the Weather. That is career specific. Now, Well Rested now also has a chance to cure Night Owl and Skin Outbreak. So if you've seen the resting event, which gives you about 70 energy, if that happens while you have Night Owl, that can cure it. It's roughly similar to doing a recreation and you end up in a shrine event. And if you have a debuff, that shrine event has a chance to remove any random debuff you have. Another addition is training with the reporter present has a chance to cure Slacker. Choosing the extra training during the extra training event now has a chance to remove a random debuff you have. And to make it clear, the extra training option is the top option, which costs 5 energy, but you get 5 bonus stat of the stat you just trained, and the bottom option is the one that most people pick, which is recover 5 energy. So you might think about picking the top option when you have a debuff just so that you don't waste a turn in the infirmary instead. Another addition, another quality of life change is that the fan letter event also has a chance to cure Slacker. FanFest event, which happens in senior year, early April, now has a chance as well to cure slacker and even slow metabolism. So all in all, our Umas got buffed and training woes are alleviated but not completely removed. With players generally figuring out how to play Unity Cup, the upcoming changes will really make Umamusume feel like a new game to play, and the quality of life changes that we just got, I'm pretty sure it's a lot to take in. A lot of us are having fun with the effect prediction for the training events, the race scheduler, and of course updating our teams with Unity Cup veteran Umamusume as well. So overall, it is a very exciting patch to play through, discover, and learn. I hope you all enjoyed this brief rundown of the current patch that we have, and I hope to see you in the next video, and good luck with your training. Take care, everyone.